All right, everybody, so today we're going to be talking about fractions. So if you have a common denominator, well, subtracting fractions. We talked about adding fractions in the prior slide presentation. So what we're going to talk about now is subtracting fractions. It's almost exactly the same. If you have a common denominator, you just subtract the numerators. So in this situation, all we're going to do here is subtract the numerators. The denominator will stay the same. I'm going to draw my line, my fraction, and 7 minus 2 is 5, and I can keep the 9. I just end up with 5/9. Now in this situation, we have a common denominator yet again, so we will keep the denominator. And 3 minus 1 is 2. And I will keep the 4. And then this can be further simplified into 1/2. All I would do is divide both of these. Divide both of these by 2. Two divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. All right, moving on. So what we're going to do here is look at ones where we have instances where there are uncommon denominators. So 3/4 minus 1/5, what we'll do here is we have a common denominator of 20. So we're going to have a common denominator of 20. I'm going to put 1 here. We'll have one fraction minus the other. Sorry guys, that line's not very straight. All right. So what we have to do here is 4 times 5 was 20. So then I have to multiply 3 times 5, which will give me the 15. And then I'm going to do 5 times 4. You guys see I'm just multiplying each fraction times the other fraction's denominator. All right, so then 3 times 5 is 15. And 4 times 1 is 4. All right, so then 15 minus 4 is just 11. And I'm going to keep my denominator, just like I did when we added. Whoops. I'll redo that, those were a little off. There we go. All right, so we come out to 11/20. All right, now we can do one more. We have 7 and 3, if I multiplied those together, my common denominator will be 21. I'll have my two changed fractions with the common denominator here and my subtraction sign. Now, what I have to do is 7 times 3. So I will multiply the numerator times the same number. Okay, so then 2 times 3 is going to be 6. And 7 times 1 is going to be 7. All right, well, what happens here? Now we're subtracting 6 minus 7. Well, our answer is going to be a negative. Because 6 minus 7 is just what? Negative 1. So our answer will be negative 1 21st. And that's it. We did it. All right. So now we have more examples of this. I'm not going to do any more for the sake of time. You guys can go over the ones we just did. There isn't anything new or additional here when subtracting these ones. They're pretty much the same. Oh, I'm sorry. This is still the same slide. It didn't click over, did it? There we go. Okay. There's our different ones. Now, what we have here is subtracting with 3 fractions. You can do it with any number of fractions. We just have to find a common denominator between all 3 of these. And 5 times 6, if we look at the 2 higher numbers multiplied together, we get 30. Well, does 30 have anything that multiplies times 3 to get to it? Yeah, 3 times 10. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a common denominator of 30 to solve this. So we're going to have 1 denominator of 30, 2 denominators of 30, 3 denominators of 30. All right, draw our fraction line here. Okay, and we are subtracting. So now, what I'm going to have to do here, 5 times what was 30? 6. So I'm going to do numerator and denominator times 6. 3 times 10 was 30. And 6 times 5. All right, so now with this case, what we're going to do is we're going to have 4 times 6 is 24. We're going to have 10 times 1 is 10. And we're going to have 5 times 1 is 5. All right, so now we're going to have 24 minus 10, which would be 14, minus 5, which is going to be 9. So this is going to be equal to 9 over 30. So it can be done just as easily using 3 different fractions. I'm not going to do the second one just for the sake of time. You guys get the point from the first one. There's nothing different here. It's the same thing. You just find a common denominator between all 3 of the fractions. Let's move on to the next slide. All right, so just like when we were doing adding, we have another problem here that is a word problem. So what we have to do, we have to text code. So we're going to circle our numbers. And underline keywords. So if I cut out 1/6 and 1/3 from a whole apple, well, let's see here. So a whole would be, in fraction form, we'll use 1/6 and 3/6. So we use 6. So we'll say it is 6/6. So word problems can be tricky like that. They say a whole. Well, you have to realize that that means 6/6. So now what we're going to have is 6/6 minus 1/6 minus 1/3. 6 minus 1/6 minus 1/3. Go ahead and fill in the numbers real quick. Okay, so what we're going to get is that this is equal to, well, what we got to do here, let's change this 1/3 into a common denominator with 6. So 3 times 2. Can't add that without changing the denominator, can we? Or subtract it, I'm sorry. So 3 times 2 and 1 times 2. So what we're going to do here, you rewrite this one more time underneath. Okay. Equal sign. 6 minus 1/6 minus 2 6 equals, so 6 minus 1 is 5, minus 2 is 3, and we keep the denominator the same. It will not change. 3/6, which can be simplified by dividing them both by 2. All right, so let's do our division real quick. Divide 3 divided by 2. And 6 divided by 2. And we are going to get 3 divided by 2 is 3. We should be dividing by 3. That's my fault, guys. Looking at it going, wait, what's going on here? So divide by 3, not 2. Divide by the numerator. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. So our final answer is 1/2. Sorry about that, y'all. All right, now, what we're going to do next. Let's talk about the answer. The answer comes out to 1/2. Skip to this one. 1 minus 1/6 minus 1/3 equals 6/6. I forgot that I did it this way. So then 6/6 minus 1/6 is 5/6, and 5/6 minus 1/3, which turns into 2/6, is 3/6, which equals 1/2. All right. So we got a problem like this. Oh. Let me go back here. Let's see if I can go back a slide. There we go. Now, we have to find a common denominator here. This is easy. What we have is minus a negative. So this is essentially going to be, they cancel each other out and become positive. So it'll be 2/5 plus 1/4 minus 2/3. Don't let that trip you up. It's just two negatives, which becomes a positive. So we end up with 2 plus minus another fraction. Okay, now we end up with 2/5 plus 1/4 minus 2/3. All right, so find a common denominator here. So the common denominator will be, so we got 5 times 4 is 20, but 3 will not go into 20. So let's look at this. We got 5 times 2 would be 10. 4 won't go into that. 5 times 3 is 15. 4 won't go into that. 5 times 4 is 20. We already said it won't go into that. 5 times 5 is 25. It will not go into that. 5 times 6 is 30. 4 will not go into that. 5 times 7 is 35. 4 will not go into that. 5 times 8. Well, we'll go into that. 5 times 8, 40. Go into that, but I don't think 3 will. 3 will not. So 5 times 4 is 20. 20 times 3 is 60. Trying to think here. Oh, let's look at it here. 60 divided by 3 would be 20. So we'll go into that. We can use 60. Sorry, guys, I had to think for a second on that one. All right. Now, rewrite this with the denominator of 60. Okay, so then 5 times what was 60? Well, let's see. 5 times 6 is 30. So 5 times 12 will be 60. All right, and then 4 times what was 60? 15. So let's go here and, oh, didn't mean to do that. All right, come on. All right, there we go. Times 15. So my answer here is going to be just 15. And then this is times 20. We talked about that. That's where I get stuck. All right, now. Then 2 times 20 is 40. Okay, now 24, 34. We have 39 minus 40. Negative 1 out of 60. All right. 39 minus 40 gives you a negative 1. All right. That one was a little complicated, it was a little tough, but all you just got to do is the same thing. It has very, very high common denominators and very, very high multiples to get to that, but it's still essentially the same thing, okay? So don't get mixed up by it. Just sit there and think. Pull out a multiplication chart. Just start multiplying. You can create a multiplication tree. So in this instance with 3, so you can just start by doing just like this. You do 3 times 1 gives you 3. 3 times 2 gives you 6. Sorry guys, this thing is so hard to write with. 3 times 3. And so on until you can do that with all 3 of these until you get the common denominator. Okay, you just go through the list. 3 times 2, 3 times 3, 3 times 4, 3 times 5, 3 times 6. Do the same thing with 4. 4 times 1, 4 times 2, 4 times 3, 4 times 4, 4 times 5. And then 5 times 1, 5 times 2, 5 times 3, 5 times 4, 5 times 5. All the way until you get to 1 where they all have the same number that they multiply to. And then that right there, that's your common denominator, okay? It's not super hard to do. It just takes time. It is tedious. You just got to work your way through it. All right, let's see what else we got here. All right, so this one's your turn to do. Essentially the same thing. It's pretty close. It's almost the same numbers and everything. You guys give it a try and we will talk about it. Got to remember the integer operations, okay? So same signs add and keep the different sign. Same signs add and keep the sign. Different signs subtract and keep the number of the biggest. Okay? You just gotta be careful. Just same signs add, different signs subtract. Yep, so just like that. So we got different signs. Okay, guys, that's it. So you guys go ahead, give this a try, work through the attached web pages. They'll give you immediate feedback and tell you how you're doing on it. If you aren't doing well, let me know and we'll get it figured out. Thank you.